I was 5 years old when I learned that monsters are real. We lived in a small ground-floor apartment. Just me and my mom. It was one of those older buildings where the windows didn't quite seal right, and you could hear your neighbors through the walls. My mom always let me sleep in her bed when I had nightmares, which was pretty much every night back then. This particular night, I remember waking up because something felt off. You know that feeling when you're a kid and you just know something's wrong? The apartment was dark except for the street light glow coming through the window. My mom had cracked it open earlier because it was stuffy. That's when I noticed Whiskers. Our cat was sitting perfectly still in the bedroom doorway, staring across the hall into my room. Not the normal cat stare. This was different. Her ears were back, tail twitching. She sat there for what felt like forever, just staring into the darkness of my bedroom. Then she walked in. I heard her meow. Not her normal meow, it was low, almost like a warning. My stomach dropped. I reached over and shook my mom's shoulder. Mom, wake up. She stirred, groggy. What's wrong, baby? Whiskers is acting weird. That's when we both looked at the doorway. A man was stepping out of my bedroom. He moved slowly, deliberately, like he'd done this before. In the dim light, I could see he was thin, wearing dark clothes. He didn't run, didn't make a sound. He just emerged from my room and stood there in the hallway, looking directly at us. My mom didn't scream, didn't freeze. She grabbed me by my arm and threw me toward the open window behind us. I hit the grass outside hard, confused, terrified. A second later, she came crashing through after me, landing beside me. Then she screamed, "Help! Someone help us!" Lights started turning on in the neighboring apartments. My mom pulled me against her, both of us on the grass in our pajamas, staring at that window like something might come crawling back out. A neighbor ran over. Someone called 911. The police came fast. 4 officers went inside while we waited in a patrol car. I remember shaking so hard my teeth chattered, even though it wasn't cold. My mom kept checking me over, asking if I was hurt, but she wasn't really looking at me. Her eyes kept darting back to our apartment. When the officers came back out, they looked confused. "Ma'am, there's no one inside. We checked every room, every closet." "That's impossible," my mom said. "We saw him. He was right there." "Was your door locked?" "Yes, deadbolt and chain." The officer shook his head. "Front doors unlocked, no chain. No signs of forced entry on any windows or doors." My mom went pale. "I locked it. I always lock it. They took a report. Told us maybe we'd had a shared nightmare, or maybe someone had tried the door and found it unlocked, then left when we screamed. They told us to get the locks changed. That was it. We stayed at my grandma's house for a week. My mom barely slept. Neither did I. When we finally went back, my mom was different, checking every lock 5 times, pushing furniture against doors. A few days later, she was cleaning. Really cleaning, trying to make the place feel normal again. She opened the small closet where the water heater was, the one tucked in the hallway near my bedroom. I heard her gasp, "Baby, go to the living room. Right now." I didn't listen. I looked. Behind the water heater, crammed into the small space, was a pillow, a blanket, a spiral notebook filled with drawings, weird symbols, faces, names I didn't recognize, a pair of latex gloves, empty gum wrappers, maybe a dozen of them, all the same brand. Someone had been in there. Not that night. Before that night. The police came back. They took everything as evidence. One officer said it looked like someone had been camping out in our apartment. They dusted for prints, asked questions. Never found him. We moved 2 weeks later. I'm 30 now, and I still think about that night, about Whiskers staring into my dark bedroom, about the notebook the gloves, the pillow behind the water heater. About how many nights he'd been in there while we slept 10 feet away. But mostly I think about this. When my mom threw me out that window, when we were screaming on the grass, when the cops found the door unlocked, he didn't run out the front door. He went back into the closet and waited for us to leave. I grew up next to an abandoned house on Maple Street. Everyone in the neighborhood knew about it. The guy who owned it moved to California back in the late 90s and just never came back. Never sold it. Never hired anyone to clean it out. The lawn grew wild, the paint peeled, and the windows went dark. For 25 years, it just sat there like a tomb. When I was 19 and home from college for the summer, I decided to go inside. I don't know why. Boredom, maybe. Curiosity. That stupid teenage invincibility that makes you think nothing bad can happen if you're the one choosing to do it. I grabbed a flashlight and some work gloves from my garage and walked over one afternoon when my parents were out. The back window was already broken. I cleared the remaining glass, hoisted myself up, and dropped into the basement. The smell hit me first. Damp concrete, rot, and something else. Something stale and sweet, like old paper left in the rain. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam landed on a grand piano. It sat in the middle of the basement, covered in a thick layer of dust. I walked over and pressed a key. The note rang out, sour and warbling, echoing in the empty space. I tried a few more. The piano still worked, but it was so out of tune it sounded sick. Around it were piles of stuff, old WW2 medals in a shadow box on the wall, a signed Elvis poster in a cracked frame, a trumpet case, a violin with no strings. It felt like a museum of someone's life, frozen mid-sentence. Then I saw the wedding photo. It was face down on a shelf. I picked it up. The frame was shattered, and the picture inside was water damaged, but I could still make out two people in formal wear, smiling. Someone had left this here, left everything here. I felt a knot forming in my stomach, but I kept going. Upstairs, the main floor was worse. The bed was unmade, sheets still rumpled like someone had just gotten up. In the kitchen, there was a pot on the stove with something black and fossilized inside, maybe soup, maybe stew. I couldn't tell. Beer bottles sat on the counter, their contents evaporated into brown sludge at the bottom, and the lights. Some of them were still switched on, after 25 years. The bulbs were dead, of course, but the switches were flipped up like whoever lived here had left in the middle of the day and planned to come back before dark. The air felt wrong, heavy. I kept getting this prickling sensation on the back of my neck, like I was being watched. I told myself it was just nerves. Old houses do that to you. But I couldn't shake it. I decided to check upstairs, then get out. The staircase was narrow, the wood warped and soft under my feet. I took each step carefully, one hand on the railing, flashlight trained ahead. I made it about halfway up when I heard it, crying, soft, muffled, coming from a room to my left. I stopped cold. The sound stopped too. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I stood there, frozen on the stairs, barely breathing. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't pipes or settling wood. It was crying, the kind of broken, hitching sobs you hear from someone who's been crying for a long time. I took one more step. The crying started again. Closer now. I didn't think. I just ran. I half fell down the stairs, stumbled through the kitchen, and threw myself back out the basement window. I hit the grass outside and didn't stop running until I was back in my own house with every door locked. I never went back. I still lived next door, and I see that house every single day. But sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, I think about the way the crying stopped the exact moment I did, like whatever was up there was listening for my footsteps, waiting to see if I'd come closer. We moved to Long Island when I was 7 years old. The house was older than the others on the block, pale yellow siding, a big backyard, and a swimming pool that my parents were excited about, even though it needed work. I remember thinking it felt too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, just empty. It was a Saturday morning, maybe 2 weeks after we'd moved in. My dad worked nights back then, so he usually got home around 6 or 7 a.m. I was an early riser, so I'd always meet him at the door. That morning, I was in the hallway when I heard my mom's voice from upstairs. "Don't go near the pool." It was clear, firm, the way she sounded when she was serious about something. I looked up the stairs. Her bedroom door was closed. "Okay," I called back. My dad came through the front door a few seconds later, looking exhausted. He dropped his keys on the table and gave me a tired smile. "Mom's already up?" he asked. I nodded toward the stairs. "Yeah, she just told me to stay away from the pool." He frowned. "Your mom's at work, bud. She left an hour ago." I felt something cold settle in my chest, but I just heard her. He looked at me for a long moment, then glanced up the stairs. He didn't say anything, just patted my shoulder and went to make coffee. I told myself I'd imagined it, that I was still half asleep, but I knew what I'd heard. A few weeks later, the new neighbors came over to introduce themselves. There were 2 moms, friends who'd moved in together with their kids. One had twin boys, maybe 9 or 10. The other had 2 daughters, one blonde girl around my age, and a younger girl with brown hair who didn't talk much. She just stood behind her mom, staring at the ground. The moms chatted with my parents while we kids got sent outside to play. The boys brought a soccer ball and we kicked it around the backyard for a while. The blonde girl was loud and competitive. The brunette just watched from the edge of the yard, near the woods that bordered our property. After a while, I got tired and wandered over to get some water. That's when I noticed the brunette girl was gone. I walked toward the tree line and found her, standing just inside the woods, staring back at the house. "You okay?" I asked. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were dark and her face was pale, like she hadn't been outside in a long time. "Do you want to play tag?" she asked quietly. Her voice sounded strange, flat. Sure," I said. "Let me get the others." "Just us," she said. Something about the way she said it made me uncomfortable. I mumbled something about needing to go inside and jogged back toward the house. When I looked back, she was gone. I found the mom still talking on the porch. I walked up to the neighbor with the 2 daughters. "Hey, your daughter wanted to play tag. The one with brown hair. She's in the woods." The woman looked at me, confused. "Honey, I only have 1 daughter." I blinked. "What?" "Just Emily," she said, pointing to the blonde girl who was still playing soccer with the boys. "I don't have another daughter." My stomach dropped. "But she's right over there." The woman's face changed. She glanced at my mom, then back at me, and her expression softened in a way that made me feel like I'd said something wrong. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "there was a little girl who used to live here. Before your family moved in, she had brown hair." My mom's face went pale. The neighbor continued. "She drowned in your pool a few years ago. After that, her mother, she had a heart attack. It was all very sad." I looked back at the woods. There was no one there. That night, my parents sat me down and told me it was just my imagination, that I'd overheard the story somehow and my brain had made it into something real. I wanted to believe them, but over the next few years, things kept happening. doors that wouldn't stay closed, wet footprints leading from the pool to the back door on days no one had been swimming, the sound of a child laughing in the yard when I was home alone, and once, late at night, I saw her standing at the edge of the pool, soaking wet, staring up at my bedroom window. We moved out when I was 13. I'm 30 now, and I still think about that house, about the voice that wasn't my mother's, about the girl who shouldn't have been there. But mostly I think about what the neighbor said before we left that day, something I didn't understand until much later. She's been looking for someone to play with for a long time. When I was 9 years old, a white SUV started watching our house. My parents worked late a lot back then. My dad managed a restaurant and my mom worked retail, so most nights it was just me and my sister Ashley. She was 16 and hated babysitting me, which meant she spent most of her time outside on her nightly breaks in the carport, while I either followed her around or watched TV inside. The first time we noticed the SUV, Ashley was having her usual break around 10 at night. I was sitting on the front steps next to her, bored, picking at the concrete with a stick. "Hey," she said quietly. "You see that?" I looked up. At the end of our driveway, maybe 40 feet away, was a white SUV. It was just sitting there with its engine running, headlights off. The windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see anything inside, not even a silhouette. "Maybe they're lost," I said. Ashley didn't answer. She just stared at it, something resting between her fingers. After a minute, she flicked her hand toward the grass and stood up. "Come on, let's go inside." The moment we stepped through the door, I heard the engine rev. I looked back through the window just in time to see the SUV roll backward, turn around, and drive slowly down the road. It parked about 3 houses down, still facing our direction. "That's weird," I said. Ashley locked the door. "Yeah." 20 minutes later, she went back outside for another break. I watched from the living room window. The SUV came back. It rolled up to the end of the driveway, stopped, and just sat there. Same spot. Engine running, no headlights. When Ashley came back in, it left again. This kept happening. Every time she went outside, the SUV would return. Every time she came in, it would leave and wait down the street. It was like it was on a timer, like someone inside was watching the house and knew exactly when she stepped out. After the 3rd time, Ashley called our parents. My dad told her to stay inside and lock the doors. He said he'd come home early, but he didn't. He couldn't leave work. The next night, it happened again, and the night after that. It went on for weeks, then months. Ashley stopped going outside as much. When she did, I'd stand at the window and watch. The SUV would always come back, creeping up to the end of the driveway and sitting there like a predator. Sometimes I'd see the glow of a phone or something behind the windshield, but I could never make out a person. It got to the point where I could feel it out there, even when I wasn't looking. One night, it must have been 2 or 3 months in, Ashley had enough. She went outside and I followed her to the window like always. The SUV rolled up right on cue. But this time, instead of taking her break and going back inside, Ashley started walking down the driveway toward it. My stomach dropped. "Ashley, don't," I said, but she couldn't hear me through the glass. She made it about halfway down the driveway when she stopped. Just froze. I could see her shoulders rise and fall like she was breathing hard. Then she turned around and ran back to the house. When she came inside, her face was white. Her hands were shaking. "What happened?" I asked. She didn't look at me. She locked the door, checked it twice, then sat down on the couch and pulled her knees to her chest. "I don't know," she said quietly. I got this feeling. Like if I took one more step, something really bad was going to happen. The SUV left a few minutes later. We told our parents again. My mom said she'd try to be home earlier. My dad said if it came back, we should call the cops. But we never did. I don't know why. Maybe because it never technically did anything. It just watched. Then one night, about a week later, my parents were actually home. I was in my room when I saw the headlights through my window. I ran downstairs. "Dad, it's back." He looked up from the couch. "What's back?" "The white car, it's outside." My dad stood up, looked out the window, and his expression changed. He walked into his bedroom and came back out holding his pistol. "Stay inside," he said. He opened the front door and walked down the driveway. He didn't run, didn't shout. He just walked, steady and calm, with the gun held low at his side. The moment the driver saw him, the SUV's engine roared. It peeled out, tires screeching, and tore out of our driveway onto the main road. My dad stood there watching it speed toward the highway. Then he came back inside, his jaw tight. "Did you see the plate?" my mom asked. He nodded. "Covered in duct tape." We never saw the SUV again. No cops ever knocked on our door. No arrests were made. We never found out who was inside or what they wanted. But I think about it sometimes. About how many nights that SUV sat outside our house, watching. About how my sister almost walked right up to it. About the duct tape over the license plate. And I think about what my dad said later that night, after Ashley and I were supposed to be asleep. If I hadn't been home, I don't think that car was ever planning to leave.